talk about short stories. Alright guys, welcome back to my channel. I'm Zach with Zacks Books, and welcome back to Zocktober. So for today's episode, what I wanted to do was my favorite kind of like horror short story collection novella type things. Like anything that's under 300 pages. Very excited to share some of these with you guys because they are some classics and some favorites. So make sure you guys let me know in the comments what you guys really enjoy that's under 300 pages. That's pretty much the only criteria I'm following. It's horror and under 300 pages. So let me know in the comments what you guys have. Also, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and let's get to some horror books. Alright, The Hellbound Heart by Clive Barker. So this is the little book that inspired the Hellraiser franchise. I'm not sure if there is a sequel because obviously there's more than one Hellraiser, but I don't think there is. What ends up happening in this is there's a guy who like wishes for some sexual fantasy on like this box, and these creatures appear and pretty much like kill him, and then like the wife comes back, and a lot of things happen in this book, and it was very intriguing to read this finally, and I did really enjoy it. So figured I'd put it on this list because it was short enough, and it was a really creepy story. It was kind of weird at some points, but what are you gonna do? So there you have The Hellbound Heart by Clive Barker. Next up is Rosemarys Baby by Ira Levin. So this is, well, what inspired Rosemarys Baby, the movie. And I gotta say, this was actually a pretty good story. I didn't really expect it to be as good as it was, and it completely was. This was in my short, this was in, I think it was Classic Horror Books Part 2. We'll link that up here if you guys want to take a look at that video. But this was part of that, and it was a very good story. I'm pretty sure I gave it 5 stars, and I think Hellbound Heart I gave like 4 or something like that. But this was a very good book. I really enjoyed it. This is, obviously, as you know, it's about Rosemary, and she's trying to have a baby, and her husband's actually part of like this cult or something like that, and it does not go well for her in the end. There is a sequel to this book called Rosemary's Son, and I haven't read it yet, but a lot of people really don't like that book by what I've heard and seen so far. So I don't know if I will read it, but I might, just because I am slightly intrigued with it to see what happens with the child as it grows up. But yeah. There you have Rosemary's Baby by Ira Levin. Alright, the next one up is Blankie by Keelan Patrick Burke. So, the obvious choice I could have put on here was Sour Candy, but I feel like that's on my all-time favorite list, so I really didn't want to include that on this one. But I'm going to put Blankie in its place because this is my second all-time favorite Keelan Patrick Burke book. And again, the problem is they're all kind of short, so I can't really like describe a whole lot about the books. But pretty much what happens with this is this married couple has this child, and it dies, and the husband pretty much is like feels guilty all the way. The wife is living with her parents because she doesn't like him right now. They're kind of in like a struggle, and one day he goes up to the attic, or goes upstairs to the baby's room, and there's this blankie just sitting on the ground. And he's like, I thought we packed that away. And a whole lot of things kind of start happening after he finds the blanket again. So, again, I'm going to leave it as vague as that. I can't say much more because it will spoil the book because it is very short. So, but if you have read Keelan Patrick Burke before, you know that it's going to take a lot of dark turns, and that is pretty much what it did. So, for this list, I have got Blankie by Keelan Patrick Burke. Alright, next up is The Neighbors by Anya Alborn. So, this one is luckily under my criteria for being under 300 pages, so it's on the list. And pretty much what happens with this is there is this guy who moves back to a town, and he's being a roommate with an old friend of his. And what ends up happening is they have these weird kind of sketchy neighbors. I think it's an older couple, and It's a very weird story, and I can't really say much more than that. Just know the neighbors are very weird, and I can't say much about the book because too much would be too spoilery, and it's a very out there book, and
there's not much more I can really say about it because otherwise I'd be spoilering. I'd be spoiling
way too much with this book if I continue to say more about it. So just know he moves in with this buddy of his, and the neighbors are really weird, and like everyone in the neighborhood is kind of like warning him about those people, and like it's very weird, and it's a very Anya Alborn book in my opinion. It's very good and very enjoyable. So there you have The Neighbors by Anya Alborn. Alright, the next book I'm going to talk about is House of Shadows by Darcy Coates. So the original book I had set aside for this was The Whispering Dead, another very solid book from Darcy Coates, but then I read this one, and I honestly really love this story. It's about a girl named Sophie, and pretty much what ends up happening is she lives with her father. A big accident kind of happens with their family, and like they're about to lose a whole bunch of money, but luckily like they went and saw this show like a couple days prior, and they met this really rich guy, and this guy basically like goes to their house a few days later and is like, I want to marry your daughter. And pretty much from there a whole lot of weird things kind of start happening. She moves in with him, and you meet the whole family. The house is really weird. It's a very dark book. But yeah, there is a sequel to this called House of Secrets. This is the one I put on the list because it's the first one of the two, and I absolutely loved this story. But yeah, very cool book, very dark book, and I absolutely love the twists in the plot and everything, so that's why it's on this list. There you have House of Shadows by Darcy Coates. Alright, the next one up is Night of the Mannequins by Stephen Graham Jones. I've read a couple by him. The other one's kind of meh. This one was by far the one that stood out the most to me. Pretty much what happens is there's a group of friends, and over the summer they want to pull one final prank on this movie theater where they keep getting kicked out. One of their friends works there, and pretty much what they end up doing is they take a mannequin, they dress it up like a person, bring it to the movie theater, and from there a whole lot of weird things kind of start happening. One of the kids just kind of doesn't really seem to be acting right, and all the other friends kind of know it, and it takes a lot of dark twists, and it's a very, very weird book. So, but yeah, there you have Night of the Mannequins by Stephen Graham Jones. Alright, so the next one that I have, I actually have got 3 from this short story collection by Stephen King. They're all under 300 pages, so it counts. And I know it's in a collection, but obviously they don't sell them separately. I think they sell The Mist separately, and that's it. So, first one is, well, The Mist, from the collection Skeleton Crew. So, The Mist is, I think, one of his more longer short stories, and I absolutely love the premise, like everything about it. Basically, this small town gets hit with this mist, and there's weird mysterious creatures in the mist, and they're stuck in like a grocery store, like a supermarket, and it's just very cool. The movie is great. The endings differ a lot, and even King had mentioned like the way how the movie ended. He was like, I wish I did that, because like this is just how good the movie ending was. But the book one, it's a really cool book. It's such a great story. I would highly recommend it. If I was recommending a short story to read by him, I would definitely read The Mist. The second story that's in here that I'm going to talk about is The Monkey. And that one is another classic that is just creepy as hell. What happens is there's these 2 little kids, and they go up into this attic, and they stumble across one of the weird dangling monkey thingies. And what happens is, pretty much what starts happening is every time the monkey does the clapping thing, somebody dies. And what you kind of find out is the main character that we follow, it kind of follows suit with what like he wants to have happen. So like if he says like I want this to happen to somebody, that kind of happens to that person. Like it causes bad things to happen, but it follows like the main character like point of view of like this is the person I don't like, this is what I want to have happen, or like it's all done on like accident. It's not like he's purposely doing it. And the last part of it with the monkey, the last part is like very intense and it's very like edge of your seat when you're reading it, and I absolutely love that portion of the book as well. So there you have The Monkey by Stephen King. And the last story that I'm going to talk about from this is The Raft. So I have not read this collection completely. I've read 4 stories in this: The Mist, The Monkey, The Raft, and Here There by Tigers, which is a weird story about a tiger in a bathroom. Whatever. The Raft was actually part of the movie Creepshow 2. Pretty much what happens is there's this group of college kids, and they go out into this lake, and they stumble across this raft, and this weird black goopy thing like ends up being in the water with them, and it's not an oil slick. Let's just put it at that. And that's like one of the first things that all of them are assuming. It's just an oil slick. It's nothing wrong with it, nothing going on. That's not the truth. And I gotta say, it was a really cool story. I absolutely love the movie form of it too. It's really creepy and eerie. But I gotta say, The Raft is another story that I just had to talk about in this book because it is such an underrated story and it's really good. So there you have from Skeleton Crew, The Mist, The Monkey, and The Raft. Alright guys, so here you have some of my favorite short story, novellas, small novels of horror books that are under 300 pages. I really enjoyed all these stories. Again, I need to fully read Skeleton Crew. I got a lot more like short stories I got to read from Stephen King. But those 3 in there are by far my favorite. So what are some of your favorite short stories, novellas, things that are under 300 pages in terms of horror books or writings or collections? Make sure you let me know in the comments down below. And as always, we'll see you guys in the next episode of Zocktober. Later.